Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update from Cosa Resources Corp. Cosa is traded on the TSXV under the ticker COSA and on the OTCQB under the ticker COSAF. And I'm joined today with Keith Bodnarchuk, President and CEO, and Andy Carmichael, VP of Exploration. And gentlemen, it's great to have you on the show, as always, to dig into Cosa Resources. What you have up here on the screen, the reason we're doing a video is just to show people the project map, a lot of different projects, a lot of different targets, but obviously front and center for the company now after the joint venture with Denison are really the Murphy Lake North and Darby projects. So Keith, throwing it over to you first, walk us through the upcoming drill program focused at Murphy Lake and what the goals of the program are.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, great to be back on here, Shad. We're excited. We just released our upcoming drill plans for our Murphy Lake North project. For a reminder, that's a joint venture with Denison Mines, whereby we have 70%. Denison Mines has 30% interest in the project. We previously drilled it in the winter of 2025, and we're excited to get back and follow up those interesting interesting results that we had. And reminder that Murphy Lake North is here along trend of the Hurricane deposit. Our group is very familiar with that deposit, having discovered it during our time at ISO Energy. Importantly, this is going to be our largest. This can be actually the largest program in the history of Murphy Lake North upcoming. We're planning on doing 8 holes, about 3,000 meters. Denison has put up their hand to maintain their 30% interest in the project. So they'll be funding alongside of us. So it's a good sign, and really, it speaks to the partnership that we're developing on this project and the excitement of the overall joint venture on testing these targets. And so, we're excited to get out there. I'll pass it off to Andy here to kind of follow up. We're on schedule to start probably end of June, early July to get out there and start drilling these exciting targets.
Well, and Andy, as you're getting that pulled up, maybe just remind people of the prior holes that you just drilled and vectoring in and what you learned from the last drill program.
Yeah, for sure, Shad. In the winter of 2025, we went in there with a pretty small four-hole reconnaissance program. We had a couple of objectives, and first and foremost was we believed that the hurricane deposit geology trended onto the project into Murphy Lake North in that northwestern corner, and we wanted to prove that it was there, and then figure out how much of it we had. And it was job one, and we accomplished that. We were pretty confident that that hurricane geology is trending through just as shown in the map and just like we hypothesized. And our fourth and final hole of the program, number four, intersected some pretty substantial looking alteration in the sandstone just above the unconformity. Looks like we overshot the optimal target by about 25 meters. And it's not bad looking alteration. Based on the results, it looks like we have about 2 kilometers of strike length of that hurricane deposit trend within the project. And that's going to be one of the focal points of our upcoming drill program is follow up that alteration to the along strike. We know it extends. We believe it extends at least to that historical hole, Curve 15 off project. Really similar sounding alteration there. That's about 2 kilometers away from our hole. And that's a pretty significant strike length of alteration in the Athabasca Basin. It's exciting to be drilling sandstone alteration in the Athabasca. It's a great time. Our other objective is going to be following up that parallel cyclone trend to the south. So it's really interesting. All the drilling historically on that trend has been very much concentrated in the western part of the property, including the one hole we completed in the winter. But Denison Mines did some great work in 2020. They did an EM survey shown in that lighter blue outline. It covers about 50% of Murphy Lake North. And it's a really high quality survey, really clearly define that conductive trend. But it's never been drilled. And we're really excited to get there and drill it because that portion's never been tested. It's wide open for exploration. And as you can see on the map, there's mineralization historically intersected along strike. So we think it's a great trend and situated along the La Roque Lake trend itself, one of the most fertile and highest grade deposit hosting trends in the eastern Athabasca. This is a tremendous target. And when you're considering it's at under 250 meters depth to target, it's some of the best exploration ground in the eastern Athabasca I would put forth.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Andy, it was a big reason why we, looked to do this transaction and made sure we acquired this project was obviously drilling a long trend of hurricane, but also this parallel cyclone trend, like Andy touched on, has not been drilled, is under, less than 250 meters of cover, sitting next to a world-class deposit. It's pretty rare to acquire a project like this, where there's that much open space that hasn't been drill tested yet in the eastern Athabasca.
And I think it's nice that you guys have two trends to test because it's not just a one-trick pony, it's a two-trick pony here just on this property. And I also would love you to unpack, Andy, for people listening in that are not geologists, that don't understand maybe the intricacies of exploring for unconformity deposits, that initially when you're doing exploration, you're kind of vectoring in on the structure, then the alteration zone, which you highlighted, and then eventually very discrete packages of uranium. So talk about what people should anticipate from these drill results and how they'll know if you're on the right track or not.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. That's a great point. So the key thing you want to see, the thing that's critical for these deposits is the structure, the faulting, and the prospective faults. They're rooted in the basement, and the vast majority of those are rooted in graphitic basement rocks. And so we use electromagnetic surveys to tell us where the conductors are. Those are the graphitic rocks hosting faults. We use those as a proxy to tell us where it's most likely to find structures. So this initial drill program is going to be, or this follow-up drill program is going to be much like the initial drill program, where first and foremost we want to find the structures, because if you find that, you justified doing additional work looking for somewhere along that structure where there's alteration, much like we found with hole 4 in this winter. We're going to try to repeat that success this summer along the cyclone trend, as well as following up along the hurricane trend. Once you get into the alteration, then you're starting to look for where is it improving, where is it getting stronger, broader, better developed, where's the geochemistry improving, that sort of thing. So this summer drill program, really the first one to explore the cyclone trend, it's going to be it's going to be a fairly thorough reconnaissance program. Okay, so if we get any kind of positive result whatsoever, it's going to justify going back and following it up with greater density along strike.
Well, and just one more follow-up on the one where you've already hit the alteration zone. So now you're two check boxes out of the three. You said you missed it by maybe 25 meters or so. So maybe give people a little color around that. How do you know which way to go based on the geochemistry, or how do you vector in on it even further, Andy?
Yeah, that's right. So it looks like we overshot it in the sandstone because we got into alteration, and then in the middle of that alteration zone, there was several tens of meters long zone of fairly good looking faulting, fracturing in the sandstone, and then the rocks got a bit more competent, but still were quite altered above the basement. So it tells us we overshot it. We just project it down quite steeply to the unconformity. It tells us about 25 meters away. We're going to follow that up directly, but along strike is our plan. We're going to step out along strike because 25 meters is not a very large distance, 75 feet. So we're planning to step out on, half deposit scale spacing to the northeast initially. And then we'll recalibrate after that first hole based on results and tell us what we should be doing next on that trend.
And I think with the 8 holes we have, right, we're going to be able to really test and follow up as we go. And so I think that it's very impactful, right? I keep reiterating the depth of these targets we're drilling. This will be, sub $2 million program here. And obviously Denison paying their portion, it really doesn't make a huge dent on the treasury as far as really advancing this project with these 8 holes.
Well, and I know, Keith, a lot of people are also excited about the other project in the JV, and that's Darby. And maybe we can go back to the initial slide to show people the Darby. Yeah, there you go. And so people are hot at the bit to find out what's happening next. And so maybe walk us through what the roadmap looks like to start getting drills on that property early next year.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we did the transaction with Denison, I guess the 1A and the 1B would have been Murphy Lake North and Darby. Those were two important projects that we really wanted to advance. And so Andy and the team are, as per the news release, Andy and the team are heading up to Darby here shortly. They're going to start relogging core there to help really vector towards some drill targets to test early next year. That's an exercise that our group's consistently done over the years. It was a very important exercise early for Andy, Steve, and Justin from our team when they ultimately made the hurricane discovery, right? It's not glamorous. You don't overthink it. You go there and you pull apart the old boxes, navigate the bugs and the bats and whatever's around there, and you start kind of putting your heads together and coming up with good drill targets. And it's been effective for our group in the past, obviously, and so they're looking to do that again, roll up their sleeves and really start to identify good drill targets for us to head to in Q1 next year.
Well, Andy, do you want to put a little color around that? Because your previous work at ISO Energy, when you guys did use drill core, it's an effective way to take drill core that's already been drilled. It's got a lot of money spent on it, and do some keen exploration work. So maybe walk us through the experience you've had before and what you hope to achieve with the Darby drill core.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Laroque East, we got the project, and a few weeks later, we were on the ground, flying around to something like 8 different historical core storages, looking at every drill hole that we could on the project. And nothing compares. You can read all the drill logs you want, you can read all the descriptions you want. They're written by different people and different decades. They don't translate directly. You have to see it for yourself, even if that core is deteriorated and it's full of bats and bugs, like Keith was saying. There's nothing of higher value and lower cost you can do to generate targets and increase the confidence you have in the targets you've already developed, and maybe even scratch one or two off the list and hopefully generate a few more. It's an incredibly valuable exercise to just go look at the actual geology on that property that you're drilling, get your hands on it, and develop your own feel that may or may not agree with the historical core logs, right? And that's what we plan to do at Darby. It's what we did before Laroque East, and that's what led to us being able to put a drill on that project at the tail end of our summer program, and with our very first drill hole on the project, discover Hurricane, right? It was that hands-on geology that we did to confirm the desktop geology. Now, it's really similar at Darby. Darby's a similar project to Laroque East when ISO Energy acquired it, in that it's kind of been dormant for a long time. There's a bunch of really interesting results on it. Most of the drilling was done as just a single hole fence. Almost none of those holes were followed up, whether they were overshots or undershots, or no one has any idea how they missed. But results are really interesting. Like, the fundamental ingredients are there. We're going there to look at every drill hole that we can on the project. We have half a dozen top shelf in our pocket drill targets ready to go. But this is doing our due diligence. We got to look at it ourselves, verify that the reports are, or the historical logs are what they say, and develop them with greater confidence before we put a drill on the project. There's a few trends on that project that we're really itching to put a drill on, but we owe it to ourselves to go in there and look at it firsthand. And spending a week at Darby looking at 35 drill holes, it's a no-brainer before you go in there and drill.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and good luck with the drill core. Good luck with the bats and the bugs too. Hopefully, there's not too many, Andy. And then
Yeah,
Keith, just one
thanks.
more news item we got to get to is you did have an A&T survey over at Orion, and so not the core property right now to be focused on, but good data and a good target. Let's maybe talk about the A&T survey that you just got some results back on late May.
Yeah, certainly. You always see, our strategy has always been, we've kind of always tried to reflect that to the market, is that we always make sure we have those pipelines of targets ready to go. Obviously we keep referencing ISO Energy, the success we had there at Laroque East with the very first drill hole after the team acquired the project, but it was the seventh project. And so you always have to maintain that pipeline of drill targets. You always have to have, projects that are ready to go, because if Murphy Lake North stuff's not quite showing what we want, we'll be ready to go with the next one. And that's what we continue to advance. Cosmo, we did surveys on, obviously, Orion, we've recently done survey, and we have some A&T results that were really exciting. And I'll have a slide here I can let Andy speak to really discuss those exciting results at Orion.
Thanks, Keith. Orion is one of these projects where the more we look at it, the more we like it and the better it gets. It's usually the opposite. The more you look at them, the more the warts and the scars start showing, and the problems. But Orion's a fantastic project. We think it's on the southwest extension of the Laroque Lake Trend, the same one hosting Hurricane and a bunch of other super high grade showings along that trend. The difference being that there's 2 drill holes on this project. It's wide open. Another really interesting thing about it, it sits on where the Laroque Lake Trend is intersected by that east-west Cigar Lake Tucker Lake Trend, where there's a bunch of occurrences of mineralization, and of course Cigar Lake, one of the best mines in the world of any type. And then on the other side of the project, there's this historical drilling on drill hole Par 03, some weak mineralization. It doesn't sound that impressive, but the 0.05 over 1 meter, but that actually is really impressive. That's quite a bit thicker than the mineralization we were following up when we discovered Hurricane. The alteration in structure descriptions sound very good, and we think that trend goes right through Orion and right through the area we did A&T, and so we're looking at this color image of a seismic velocity, so seismic wave velocity through the sandstone, just just above, just below the unconformity. And what we're seeing is we're seeing these east-west trends. They tend to, these anomalies line up east-west, right where we'd expect the cigar tucker trend to pass through. And they sit right over the basement conductivity. And like a couple of minutes we were talking about, that's our proxy for faulting, our geophysical proxy for faulting in the Athabasca Basin. And we think it looks great. The more work we do here, the better the targets get. It's usually the opposite. So we're really excited about Orion, and this ANT survey is kind of just scratching the surface of the project. Was we don't even touched the Laroque Lake trend part of it yet, and it's expansive. It's a large area we have to explore there, and again, some of the best ground I think in the Eastern Athabasca.
So just highlights again, you have a target-rich portfolio, guys. A lot of things to go after. So Orion's still sitting pretty there as another project waiting in the wings for future exploration work. So I guess just Keith, as we wrap up, what would you say as far as the vision going into this summer, going into the rest of 2025 for Cosa Resources?
Yeah, for sure. I think, we've really done a good job over the past year and a half, obviously getting the Denison transaction done. But yeah, I guess even going back a couple of years, you can see the strength of the portfolio that Andy, Justin, and the team have put together here. We're really proud of the land package we've been able to acquire in a really competitive environment. And so this is the most exciting time for us right now. We're about to get the drills turning again. I'll be heading up to site there. Andy will be up at site, and this is the most exciting time of the year for us. And so we're chomping at the bit to get going and drilling at Murphy Lake North. And so watch for steady news flow over the course of the next few months. Obviously, that'll carry into initial drill program at Darby. So it's exciting time for us. Are really focused on putting our dollars into drilling because that's the biggest catalyst for a company like us, and we're going to continue to do that over the next, 12 to 18 months.
Well, it is an exciting time for the company, and we'll keep following along with all the drill news here at the KE Report. For those of you listening in, if you want to follow along with the news, definitely click on the link down in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Cosa Resources website, straight to their news section where you can sign up for updates or just follow along as the assays hit. Fingers crossed, guys, that you hit some big scores here in the summer drilling program. Keep us posted. We'll get you back on for an update. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Shad.